Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from the unapologetic perspective of the Hoosier Left. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm recording from Bloomington, and as I record, we are nearing the 100th day of Donald Trump's second administration. That's all. 100 days. It's been so disorienting as to make one completely lose any sense of time. The other day, I saw a tweet that said, "So far, 2025 feels like being awake during surgery," and I think that best captures the mood. In 1933, Hitler's Nazis dismantled a democracy in only 53 days. So, as we near 100, I am happy to announce that our representative form of government still stands at the precipice, staring into the abyss of tyranny, hanging by a thread, barely, I guess. There's been no Reichstag fire, no singular moment marking America's descent into fascism, but 1,000 cuts. I think the "it can't happen here" crowd imagines a sort of reverse Wizard of Oz situation. One moment you're living in color only to find a cold, gray autocracy with tanks rolling down the street on the other side of the door. 21st century dictators don't operate like that. Just as he's done with countless women, Trump has repeatedly violated the law, ignoring court orders and essentially saying, "What are you going to do about it?" So far, nothing. In March, the president issued an executive order asserting far reaching powers over state election laws that would disenfranchise millions of voters and clearly violates Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution. The day I write this, a judge blocked part of the order from taking effect. Will the administration heed this order? Will we even have free and fair elections in 2026? We have to fight this regime at every turn, right now, to ensure the creeping vines of authoritarianism don't completely strangle what democracy we've got left. And we also have to plan for those elections next year as if they will proceed normally. And it might feel early to think about November 26, but in Indiana, the primary is just over a year out. So, with that, I welcome my first candidate for office in next year's midterms election. Jackson Franklin is 25 years old and a staff sergeant in the Indiana Army National Guard. He served as a combat medic for 6 years and went overseas to Kosovo in 2023. He works as a paramedic and has assisted in several local campaigns as well as serving as a policy advisor for previous congressional races. From the Muncie area, Jackson is also close to earning a bachelor's degree in American history from American Military University. He's running for Congress in Indiana's 5th District, which includes the communities of Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, Anderson, Muncie, Marion, and Kokomo, and is currently represented by Republican Victoria Spartz. In this discussion, I'll ask what motivated Jackson to jump into such a big race for his first campaign, and we'll talk about ways the Democratic Party could better appeal to working class voters. We'll look at some of Congresswoman Spartz's failures, and I ask if this district is ready for a left populist candidate. We touch on universal health care, Ukraine, imperialism, greed, and the flaws in our system of government. Before we jump to the interview, please consider supporting Who's Left with a paid subscription. This is an independent media project. I don't paywall content, and I don't rely on advertising. Only individuals like you sustain this endeavor. So please, if you find value in my work, go to whosleft.us and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help me write more, research more, and organize more. Not ready for a long-term commitment? You can throw a one-time contribution in my hat on Cash App or Venmo. Links in the show notes. I would also like to dedicate my full time to you, this project, and Indiana's future, but I need your financial support to do so. Right now, I'm offering yearly subscriptions for only $30 until the end of April. And hey, I understand if things are rough right now. There are other ways to help grow this community by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding articles to your people. We are building a community of Hoosiers here dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, and I'm personally at ScottRodge78 on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and Mastodon. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Thanks again. Now, here's my conversation with Jackson Franklin. Hey, Jackson Franklin, welcome to the Who's Left podcast.
Thank you for having me, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing good. Doing great.
So, I was going to say, you're running for Congress next year in 26, and
Mhm.
as we're thinking about this interview, I'm like, man, it's awfully early to be getting into this thing, but like
Right.
the primary is just a little bit over a year from now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the timeline you're working with. You need to be up and running at this
Right.
point.
Yeah, especially being a grassroots campaign, like unlike many other candidates or politicians, I don't take any corporate money, no corporate PACs, nothing, no super PACs or anything. So we're really emphasizing on the grassroots level of things like that in-person interaction across the district and actually across the state too. Building up this grassroots movement and also I noticed you had Chelsea McDonald, huge fan of hers as well.
Love Chelsea.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, with Civic Impact Network. But yeah, just building up a grassroots organization, and we rely on small dollar donations only. From working class people, because I'm only interested on what the working class has to say. We have enough politicians that are only serving the ruling class. This is a real Bernie Sanders or AOC approach in Indiana, and we're trying to give a voice to the people and stand up to the corrupt oligarchs that are running this country.
Hell yeah. And it's something that we haven't really tried a lot here in this state. That approach we tend to, I think, as Democrats in Indiana, buy the myth that, oh, this is a conservative state, so we have to
Right.
keep running to the right, and find this imaginary center,
Right.
which may or may not even exist.
I say it doesn't. I say there's a working class vote, and that's the one you gotta go to. So
Hmm.
Kamala Harris obviously went around with Liz Cheney trying to win the moderate Republican vote. And if you look from the 2020 election and the 2024 election, about 4% of registered Republicans voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Guess how many voted for Kamala after her big strategy? Exactly 4%. So this
Yeah.
mystery Republican flip vote. Now, I'm not going to say in 2026, 2024, because a lot of people might be disenfranchised, but it doesn't mean they're disenfranchised because of the bullshit. You don't got to be knee deep in the bullshit to try to win over their vote. Be like, no, 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 no. We were all lied to. You got to have the actual counter narrative. But if you sound like the exact same person that's been screwing them, they're going to be like, oh, these guys are the same. You got to have that.
Yeah.
You got to make a home for people.
You really got to like stand for something and say this is where I am, and be authentic about it. Present your vision. If like you said, um, if you're trying to be the other guy, number one, like why have the knockoff when you can get the original? But then
Right.
also, yeah, the whole, well, oh, they're all just alike thing
Mhm.
doesn't inspire. So
Right.
let's
Yeah.
talk about you
Okay.
a
Good.
little bit, right? Like why I mean, I'm looking at you, Jackson. How old are you? You
I'm
look like a kid.
well, thank you. I'm 25 years old. I'm a combat medic in the Indiana Army National Guard, have been for 6 years now and in counting, so still in. I'm a paramedic in my community. And yeah, I'm also a triplet, funny enough. But yeah, I'm running a grassroots populist campaign fighting to get money out of politics. And we're doing that by only accepting small dollar donations. And as I said, no corporate money or anything like that. And Yeah, we want the Democratic Party to grow a spine and actually, take charge and give a counter narrative and fight for us and not just turn over and like take it while laying down, getting kicked while you're laying down. But yeah, we need a real alternative in our politics. And you've mentioned the Tea Party quite a bit in some
Mhm.
videos. We have an opportunity to change the Democratic Party right now, like we haven't had in a very long time. So it's kind of up to us. I wouldn't even just say progressives, just anyone who's willing to fight for the working class generally.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of up to us to like take the wheel, because right now, polls are in like who's the leader of the Democratic Party is kind of absent right now, other than like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Tim Walz. So it's very clear with the
The
people, with the
yeah.
base where
Even
they
but all
want.
those people are, like, polling, I think, in these polls, like, who's the leader of the Democratic Party, and,
Mhm.
like, I think AOC and Bernie and, like,
Yeah,
Chuck Schumer are all in there, and they're all polling,
right.
like, 10% maybe. It's not a lot.
Right. Yeah, yeah, the people in the poll I'm thinking about, most people actually say, "I don't know."
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah.
even number 1 is not like, "Oh, 51% Bernie." No, 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 no. It's like most people are like, "I couldn't tell you," you know?
Mhm.
But yeah,
But
giving that
he and
alternative,
AOC are out there, yeah, doing it, right? They're out
yeah.
there
Oh, yeah, they're
running
driving
running
out
all over
record
streets and everything,
crowds.
yeah.
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah. So that's that, and I think the record crowds is a good sign. It's like that's what people are gravitating to right
Definitely.
now. Um, well, okay, so like 25, youthful, got your whole life ahead of you. Why Congress? I mean, why not like the local town council or something? You're like going big right off.
Right. Yeah, great question. So basically, like I've been very passionate about politics for a long time. I've helped in a few other campaigns, both for Congress and on the local level. I'm from Muncie, um, but yeah, I wanted a fighter that is like going against the corruption in our system. But around Indiana, we haven't had that fighter who's like prepared to fight. I was basically called to run by my friends and family. Everyone around me kind of was like, "Hey, no one's coming to save us. It's up to us to save it, right?"
Yep.
And yeah, and it just seems like the door was open, kind of like I'm like, all right, if you want something to done right, do it yourself. And I'm very passionate about it. I want to see change, material change for people. I don't think other candidates are gonna pledge not to take a single penny of corporate PAC money. I couldn't trust them not to do that, right?
Yeah.
And people are not going to fight for Medicare for all to guarantee healthcare to all as a human right and not as a privilege. Other candidates, they're either bought by the millionaires or are millionaires themselves. So I wanted
Yeah.
someone from the working class to step up to the table and be like, all right, we're going to be unapologetically progressive and populist, and we're not going to take any mercy. Like we've tried to run the corporate Democrats. We've tried to run the corrupt Democrats. And by the end of the day, they lose in record fashion, or much like Chuck Schumer and the other 9 Democrats in the Senate, they voted to gut our Medicaid and our food stamps just as well as most of the Republicans in the Senate. So even corrupt Democrats, they fail us time and time again. So, and if given the chance, the corrupt Democrats are going to fail us again. So, the time for debate is gone. We know the path forward. We on the actual left, we have a North Star. We have a vision. We're calling for specific policies. Whereas the
Yeah.
the right-wing Democrats, the establishment Democrats, they're just they say a bunch of words and yet nothing at all. While taking in,
Yeah. Yeah.
tens of thousands of dollars from who knows, like APAC, Wall Street, Big Pharma, what have you. And it's time to get that fight for the values that we all support for. 'Cause that's what kind of inspired me to run, is just someone needed to step up, and I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it in a long time. So Indiana is definitely in need of some more progressive fighters.
Are you worried that eschewing these large donations entirely will, leave you at a financial disadvantage in your campaign?
I'm counting on it. So financial disadvantage, yes, but by the end of the day, elections are won by people, by
Yeah.
votes. And it's morally correct, and it's like so. I've already made that point clear. It's morally correct. I think if you take, corporate bribes from and then turn the back, their back on the will of the American people, I view it as treason. Like you're a traitor. Like that should be illegal. I
Yeah.
want to overturn Citizens United, ban corporate lobbying, ban super PACs, and have public funding of our elections. So I know I'm not. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I don't have any millionaire friends. I know I'm not going to just like boom, like raise like $1 million overnight, like some other people that may run. Um, but it's so that's morally right, but also strategically right because if you want to win in this district, you have to, work on your working class, values. Like what everyone supports. 87% of Hoosiers, according to a Ball State study in November, want to legalize cannabis
Yep.
both recreationally and medicinally. All right, or actually, they're in favor of either or, and then it's somewhere like 70% straight up recreationally. So
Yeah.
the fact that we have Democrats who are bought by, let's say Eli Lilly, and then not representing the will of the Hoosiers, it's
Well, even our our Democrats in our state house have no power. Um,
well, yeah,
yeah.
but it goes to still the
Yeah.
point still stands.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, a financial disadvantage. I count on it, but we're gonna have. That's why we're starting a year early, as you mentioned before. It's because we have so much people power, and we know we're very
Mhm.
policy forward. If you go to my website, jacksonfranklinforcongress.com, you'll see like 18 policies, and we're only adding to it because we know what we're fighting for, and it's the people. So I've heard other politicians say they have results oriented policy, which means they're a political chameleon. They don't know what they're fighting for. I have people oriented policy. How about that? I exactly know what we need. And when 70% of Americans say they want Medicare for all,
Yep.
I'm like, hey, yeah, I want Medicare for all. And then you know why I can say that? It's because I don't take any money from the big health insurance companies. If I started taking money from that, well, it is impossible. Though, by the way, we said it. But if you see other corporate Democrats take this big money, they're gonna flip on a dime. They're not gonna support it. They're gonna be like, oh, we need to expand Medicaid or expand these things. Like, no, not just expand it to include all or like affordable healthcare. Like, why not
Yeah.
universal healthcare? I think healthcare is a human right. The show Breaking Bad, where the guy, has cancer and then he has to sell drugs to get medical treatment, healthcare. That would never happen in Canada. They're like, oh, Mr. White, you have cancer. Oh, how much is it going to
Yeah.
cost? Oh, no, just go get the treatment, dude.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a pretty boring show, but
yeah, episode one, roll credits, call it up.
like boring for certain things is like really good. I was just talking about this within the last couple weeks that um all these cuts coming from Washington, coming from Indianapolis, hacking away at government itself. It sounds like a good idea, right? Oh, we're going to cut the waste and the fraud and all that. There
It
really
sounds
isn't
pretty.
all that. There's really not much there, and it turns out like in the process of like hunting for this supposed waste and fraud, you're gonna cut the whole thing apart, and that's
Right.
actually holding up our entire society.
Lay off thousands in the process.
Yeah. Let's talk about your district. You mentioned your district. You're up in 5 there, Indiana's
Right.
5th congressional district. You're from Muncie. District includes the North Indianapolis suburbs, right?
Right. So
You're
like
you're
Hamilton
from
County, which is like
Mhm.
Noblesville, Fishers, Carmel, and then it goes up to Kokomo, and then Tipton, and then Anderson County. No, Madison County, which is Anderson, Pendleton,
Yeah.
and then Delaware County, which is Muncie, Yorktown, and then up to Grant County, which is like the city of Marion.
Am I correct in thinking that like the bulk of the population in that district is the the bougie burbs?
Yeah,
Like your Carmel,
most of
your
the population. Now,
yeah.
I don't have the number right in front of me. It's probably on some work page I have. It's like somewhere like I don't know, at least half of the population of this district is in Hamilton County, so like right
Yeah.
north of Indianapolis. So yeah, and
So
you got a
yeah.
lot of banks and a lot of other big businesses in that region as well.
So I'm thinking of your district as one of these potential suburban swing districts. A lot of over the last several years, suburban areas have kind of trended away from the country club Republican, the Mitt Romney kind of Republican, as those folks have become an endangered species.
Mhm.
Um, these folks aren't, don't get me wrong, a lot of them are sticking with their brand and they're, voting Trump and they're voting MAGA because they think it will be best for their bottom line. They're seeing now, maybe not, that yeah, capitalism actually doesn't like chaos. They like certainty.
Right.
Um, is a suburban upper middle class district like that ready for a progressive or a leftist?
Most definitely. In fact, I think that's the only way to win this district. If we run another pseudo conservative Democrat, all right, if you have a fake friend and a true enemy, in a sense, people are or like a fake Republican and a real Republican on the ticket, they're gonna like, oh, I'm just gonna go for the real thing. If that appeases, they're going to go the one that's going to guarantee their position. And then you're not going to get turnout. Like my generation, if you're not a working class populist, my generation largely just doesn't show up, and
Yeah,
like some other generations as well, and just many people. Well, working class progressivism, populism, whatever you want to call it, is the only way to guarantee that many independents show up. Many non-typical voters will show up. So it's not only like, and I fair point to like Hamilton County being like, oh, they're more, you know, up like middle class, some upper class, whatnot. I think it's largely, most definitely, most working class, right? So and I think our message appeals, like just materially for people. Because when you have a position like, I keep on mentioning it, Medicare for all, that pulls at 70%. It doesn't matter what class you are. 70%
yeah,
speaks for itself, right? So it's like, oh, are we gonna abandon the thing that has 70% approval rating, or abandon the thing that has 87% legalizing cannabis, just because, oh, we want to appeal to this like mystery 5% or 4% of Republicans that won't vote for you anyway? No. So I think if we run, and yet we'll see how it turns out in the primary. As of right now, I'm the only one that's declared candidacy for the fifth district. But if there's a conservative establishment Democrat taking in large amounts of corporate money, and then you contrast it with this campaign, I feel quite confident that we are going to steam through the primary, because it's like, oh, that person sold us all out. They took corporate bribes and they don't support the same policy that you support. All right, too easy. It's going to be the easiest messaging battle in the history of politics, in a sense. So I think it's the only way to win, to have grassroots progressivism in the fifth district. And you'll see the average with these special elections down in Florida, and I think the first and
mhm,
second district. So one in the first district they won by 22 points, and in the second district they won by 18. So the average of that is like 19 points. So guess what the percentage was for Victoria Sparks versus Deborah Pickett 2024 in fifth district? Victoria Sparks won by 18 points. So if we have that natural swing of, not a natural, it's like quite like, oh gosh, that's a huge swing for Florida to go, for that one district to go 22 points that way. And, in the fifth district, all right, if we have a 22-point swing, then the Democrat wins by, 6 points, or 4 points. Anyway, so yeah, and then you're not going to get that if you don't stand for anything. I think the D next to your name only goes so far. But if you're a
yeah,
weak Democrat with no message and no narrative, no North Star pointing you what to fight for, I don't think you're going to see that bump relate to the fifth district. You need to have a message, and I think even without this huge Trump swing, I think my message, our campaign's message, largely resonates with people, where we're just going to naturally have an increase in points and large turnout for us, like we haven't seen in this district for a long time.
Yeah. I think a lot of the appeal of Trump and even the appeal of somebody like Bernie Sanders on the left is they're correct in identifying the problem that uh, there is a rigged system. You know that the elites across the political spectrum have set up the system to work in a way that works for them and the donor class, and not for the people. Now, they offer entirely different solutions. Um, we're seeing the Trump solutions now not working so great, again, which we knew, but like the people in Hamilton County say the system was working pretty good for them. Are they going to want that sort of change when, look, Carmel, folks living there, generally, they're doing okay. Noblesville, Fishers, you know, these are wealthy suburbs. I don't see them wanting to like rock the boat too much in either direction. That's kind of why they have always gravitated to like that centrist Republican type.
Well, I guess we'll see about that. I think kind of the I think there's it. I don't dismiss that notion. I just think that
Yeah,
they're also ready to have healthcare, and I think they're ready to protect Social Security. I think they're ready to stand up for our veterans. Paid family leave benefits everybody. Universal daycare, universal pre-K and school lunches. These are not radical. All right, these are, if if it's popular, it's centrist. And if a Democrat does not support paid family leave for someone to take care of their child once they're born or adopted, then they're on the right wing. Like they're like, oh, you're the extremist for not supporting Medicare for all. So it's like, why are we running away from popular ideas that not only are cheaper, they're morally
yeah,
correct. 68,000 Americans die every year due to lack of health insurance. Why can't we be like every other nation on the planet and guarantee healthcare to all? So these things, let's say they are, more wealthy and they're not ready for like radical change. What is more radical are these tariffs. It's instability. So I would say we give that kind of stability, but also I could send, like, if you vote for more, grassroots Democrats, grassroots populist, we can send your child to like daycare. We can send them to public, high school. We can send them to, affordable or, universal college. And like I think that's kind of like what they want according to all the polls. Like if we're just, going on scientific data here,
yeah.
that's what the people want. So I don't, and we haven't ran a populist Democrat in a long time, but maybe it's more risky to run the establishment Democrat, which it is. It's the real risk is not supporting what I'm supporting. And the real risk is not being grassroots and taking corporate money. You see, like this is really the only way to win. Like we can run another corporate establishment Democrat. All right, you're going to lose again. All right, and then that's one more seat to the Republicans.
It's the same thing we've been doing in Indiana for like 20 years now.
Exactly.
We think that a diet Republican is what people want here as they as the Republican Party does go further and further and further to the right. Uh, some people are going to stick with the brand. A lot of people are going to follow them off the cliff, and a lot of others just aren't gonna be like you said. They're not happy with the Democratic brand. So we need to update our brand.
The brand right now is spineless. And right now we need to grow a fucking spine and fight on all, like obstruct on all fronts. Like if Chuck Schumer, and I know Senator Cory Booker did the like record breaking 25-hour long speech. I would have loved to seen that right before they cut $880 billion out of Medicaid.
Yeah,
So, and another performances like that. But like, and I applaud him. Like, good. Like, I think that's good. He did that. Of course, I'm not trying to diss
Yeah,
on Cory Booker right now, but it's like, all right, well, if you were gonna like strategically do that, I think, and like someone should have followed him right up. Like the second he stepped down,
yeah.
all right,
Next
Chucky
man up.
Schumer, get up here. Give your, it doesn't have to be 25 hours long. Like, hey, get up there
Yeah,
for like 8. Do a work day up there, just like with your binder, just flipping pages. And Democrats should
get
just
it.
hold the floor, be like, until you promise to, name an issue, like to have due process and like not, send our citizens, legal residents to torture camps, like slave labor camps.
Yeah,
Like, the Senate is not, nothing's getting through the Senate until you promise that you're not going to cut 880 billion, or you revoke the bill before it got passed. 880 billion dollars out of Medicaid, 230 billion dollars out of SNAP, and 330 billion dollars out of student loans. Until those provisions are out of the bill, the Senate, nothing's happening. So we need Democrats that will take a like growth spine and actually do something, and not just do performance, and like theater,
yeah, yeah.
which politics is theater, of course, but that materially helps people is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of theater to politics, and especially I think the way our culture is, that it's even more so um, than than in many places. I think, but at the end of the day, like the reason you are there is to enact laws that benefit the people,
Mhm.
and there's not a whole lot of that going on
Right.
right now. I want to talk about the current incumbent up there in your district, Victoria Sparks. She was in the news a little bit lately. Had a couple of town
Okay.
halls, one in Westfield, one in Muncie, on back-to-back days, and the constituents were not happy with her. Or did you go to either of those?
I went to both of them, and it was
Yeah.
awesome to see, I might say. Uh,
How many paid George Soros protesters did you run into there?
I'm still waiting on my paycheck, Scott. I don't know about you guys, but no, no pay. She keeps on saying that, oh, paid Soros protesters, but you look at the crowd, it's like a grandma worried about Social Security and veterans worried about their VA benefits, or they just cut the veteran suicide hotline. I'm a combat medic. I know many people, you know, personally that have committed suicide in the army. Like, it's, if you're in the military, yeah, people that kill. So why are we doing that? Why are we cutting,
Yeah.
veterans health care and veterans, like the VA, like therapists, psychiatrists, and then like military to civilian job transitions? Why are we cutting the thousands of workers out of the VA in a time of crisis for veterans right now? So no, no one was a paid Soros protester. Everyone came there with very real concerns. And Victoria Spartz didn't answer any of our questions. She kept on dodging. She was asked about, in the Muncie town hall specifically, she was asked, like, do you support due process for legal residents? She said, "Oh, well, you need to come here legally, and I don't think like there's oh, well, they're not coming here legally, and criminals do not deserve due process." Well, let's dissect that a little bit. Legal residents, by definition, are here legally. Kind of a no-brainer. Two, how are you going to prove someone's a criminal if you don't have due process to prove that they are guilty? So that's just, and that's in the Constitution. Everyone's, and like, no matter if you're an American citizen or not, everyone is entitled to due process. So Victoria
Yeah,
Sparks
I don't care if
either,
you're the worst damn person in the world or committed the most
Mhm,
heinous crime.
you got to
Everybody
prove it.
still, yeah,
You should be able
wants
to
due
prove
process.
it in a court of law. So I don't know if Victoria Sparks is either A, doesn't understand the Constitution, hasn't seen that bit, or B, just doesn't support the Constitution. And they say, oh, look, they're a brown immigrant coming from, south of Mexico, so just lock them up. Like, who knows what it is? Like, with this regime in power right now, I honestly have no clue. And that's kind of seeming like Trump just floated the idea yesterday that he wants to, he's, oh, I'm gonna be transparent. We're thinking about deporting American citizens to the El Salvador slave labor camp. So they're rounding up political dissidents and they're sending them to camps. That's the point that this country is in right now, and we all gotta kind of like wake up, And
I mean,
Democrats,
of
like,
all
we need to
people,
fight now more than ever.
right? Of all
Mhm.
people, Victoria Sparks, with her Soviet upbringing, you would think. would appreciate the due process, the rule of law that our Constitution affords us, and that we should be repulsed by the idea of a gulag.
Right. Of course. Victoria Sparks is a comic book villain. Alright? So, as I mentioned before, I'm a combat medic, and in 2022, Victoria Sparks voted against the PACT Act, which guaranteed that veterans or service members that were exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and
Yeah,
Afghanistan got their health care. She voted no on that. All right, and then she's Ukrainian native, refuses to support Ukraine, and she echoes Putin's talking points. She says that Trump is the only one that can save Ukraine, which is an outright lie because Trump is continually saying that Ukraine started the war, which is an
yeah,
outright lie. So Victoria Sparks doesn't support American troops at home, and she doesn't support Ukrainian troops fighting for their democracy and their sovereignty. Seems like she just hates troops. Why is that, Victoria? You know?
yeah. I'm glad I mean, we're gonna guess bring up Ukraine by talking about Victoria Sparks, but I'm kind of glad it came up, because this is one of those areas where there is division uh, on the left between the the center left and the far left, as you will. Now it sounds like you support our efforts to, uh, keep Ukraine afloat so they can fight for their own sovereignty,
100%.
and don't buy the Russian line. I think a lot of folks on the left buy into the Russian propaganda, and they see the Ukraine war as just another cog in the long
Right.
American imperial project. Uh,
Right.
what do you say to those folks?
Right. So that's a great question, actually. So I actually know many people that are in that camp, and it's kind of disheartening because on one hand they'll oppose the ethnic cleansing that's happening in Gaza, but then take Russia's word for it about the ethnic cleansing that's happening in Ukraine. It's
Yeah,
I don't know if it's becoming so American, like anti-American imperialism that you overshadow like Russian or Chinese imperialism, which is like, all right, if you support one
yeah,
policy or so from China that maybe we could do here, like like their train system, like okay, yeah, sure, just say you like that policy, but you don't have to be like, oh yeah, China should take Taiwan or Russia should take Ukraine. Like no, I support
yeah,
democracy and republic. I think America should be like the beacon of democracy that we have always proclaimed to be. And I was deployed overseas to Kosovo. We went over there to stop a genocide. And now I'm not saying troops on the ground in Ukraine, but I think
right.
we should stop these ethnic cleansings and all around the world. And America has a unique position to do so. Like the UN, like Russia is one of the five members of the UNSC, the Security Council. So any action on that part, all right, China, Russia, they're going to veto it. But we can supply so many weapons and armaments to Ukraine to where it'd be like, all right, it's just a waste of your time, waste of your money, and Russian lives. And in some part, Biden did do that. Now, of course, Trump is not doing that, and that's very unfortunate to see. Inviting President Zelensky over to the White House just to trap him into a
Yeah,
shame session. But no, I think I'm against the ethnic cleansing of Ukraine. And as far as your original question about leftist, I'd say no, just support democracy where it stands. And Russia is a dictatorship. I think countries deserve sovereignty. So
yeah.
I think America, we should have like the short amount of time they're like, oh, Ukraine's a made up country, or they buy the Russian propaganda or whatever.
Mhm.
America, like many people, like in like the 1750s, would not classify themselves as Americans. It took a period of like 20 years of British beratement and like overreach of power to be like, oh no, I'm an American. You can never take that away from me.
And even
You
then, it
know,
was only like a third of the population would have called them, say we're American. Another third would have
right?
said, "Yo, we're loyal to the crown." Another third were like,
Right, yeah, there's a lot of partisans and
The
loyalists. But
the
yeah,
the
I'm
thing yeah,
solid support for Ukraine. Yeah, we need to do what needs to be done to help them maintain their national sovereignty, and we need to help rebuild Ukraine after this war's over. Like maybe have somewhat in sense of like a Marshall Plan, like what we did, and after the remnants of World War II, like help rebuild them
yeah,
up. Yeah, I'd love to. Me personally, I'd love to see some security guarantees. If not NATO, it could just be like one on one, like EU to Ukraine or America to Ukraine. Yeah, of course, this is not going to happen under Trump, obviously, but
no, no, definitely not.
no, I think that the people of Ukraine should be left like they don't need like grandma does not need to be invaded
Yeah,
anytime soon. Like they don't have that. And also there's like more than 40,000 Ukrainian children from the eastern side of Ukraine that were scattered across Russia and
yep,
changed their legal names to more Russian sounding names, and then they like you know yeah, just scatter them across. It's like
yeah,
they
they
just
disappeared these
abducted a
kids,
whole
yeah.
generation of that region's young children. So we need to do what we can. I mean, might be near impossible, but you still got to try to get those children back to their families.
It's, what I blame for, I think, the folks on the left who buy into the Russian Chinese propaganda is because there's some truth in it, right? That's how propaganda works. It takes a kernel of truth and it spins it into something fantastical, right? Imperialism is bad.
Yeah,
The
hot
US
take.
has done a lot of imperialism. Um, so yes, we should oppose US imperialism, but you don't
Right,
oppose US imperialism by supporting Russian imperialism
of
or
course.
Chinese
Right, and many
imperialism.
stories we're the main bad guy, and I'll be the first one to admit that. But
Yeah,
when you talk to like a Ukrainian citizen who has their whole village destroyed and every single one they went to school with is dead because of Russia's ethnic cleansing, it's a different story. All right, Russia's the bad guy. Like we should just be opposed to that. To me, you know, it's not that hard. Like I just oppose ethnic cleansing on a baseline. Like yeah, I
yeah.
disagree with it.
The US military industrial complex cried wolf a whole lot over the last 80 years. And so like when we actually have a just war we need to get behind, a lot of
Right,
folks over here with us are like, "Oh no, 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 no. I've seen this show before. This is Iraq all over again." So I get the hesitation,
right,
but black and white thinking from us on the left or the right is bad. We have to be able to, understand all the nuance and the different shades of gray.
definitely.
So we talked about Victoria Sparks. Let's talk about her opponent last year, the Democrat Deb Pickett. She
Mhm.
came here, lovely person, fun to talk to, very forthright. Also has a history of, working with the Hudson Institute and, coming out of the military industrial complex herself and, working under Mitch Daniels and generally doing a lot of Republican light stuff. Is that why she lost? And we talked about it earlier, but is it just failure to actually
Mm,
separate herself from her
right.
opponent?
Right. I do think that is a large part. And like I've met Deb many times, like person to person, like I love her. She's like she's very nice. But it's when it comes to like politics and like strategy, uh, I don't think she could win. All right. So like what we saw happen last time is that she didn't start campaigning till like a few weeks, like a month or two until the general, and that could not be the more opposite. I mean, look at me right now. I'm a year before the
Yeah.
primary. I'm not even, don't forget about the general. I'm a year before the primary, talking to everybody, getting like blasting social medias all the time, and, getting the word out there about the message that we know is right. So, but Deb, personally, awesome person. Politically, I just don't think the strategy is there. And I don't think that this district could flip with a, you know, someone who's not as like ready, passionate and ready to fight like my campaign is ready to do. And I don't think you're going to turn out that as many independents, young people, non-traditional voters and what have you. You're not going to get that crowd up with someone who's more tame and you know I wouldn't say right wing, but more of that liberal bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Squishy
So yeah,
squishy centrist.
yeah,
Yeah. One thing I think that you're going to encounter in your district, being a, relatively affluent one, is okay, well, all of your policies sound great, but how are we going to pay for it? What
right.
are you going to tell those folks? Yeah.
Great question. And so on my website, jacksonfranklinforcongress.com, if you want to learn how to do that, we're going to be adding how do we pay for it slide. And it's going to go over all the policies. But the fun fact is that most of these policies are cheaper. So it's like, how are we going to pay not to have it? Like who
Yeah.
do you think is going to charge you more? The for-profit, middleman that is like healthcare insurance, or hey, you just go get the treatment. You pay your taxes, and you're like, you're just in the country. Yeah, you're just going to get the treatment. So like someone who's designed to make profit at your expense, or this is just what the treatment costs, and like tax the rich. So in short, every question, there's a plan, there's a means to way how. Uh, Tax the rich. They have most of the money in this country, and
Yeah.
they yeah, if it's either cheaper to do right now or the rich can pay for it. And like with universal education, I'm in support of Bernie's plan. So like taxing Wall Street, it's a very small percentage, but you'll be shocked about how much money it would be. So a 0.05% tax on insider Wall Street trading, like stock trading, that would be able to that would wipe the student debt clean in a year. And then you keep that tax, and then look, we could have universal public education, like universal public colleges, and we could reinvest in our young people and the just people going to college, and then we can bring the brains back to the talent and the knowledge back to this country. Imagine what we could do with thousands, millions more people that have the skill set and the knowledge, the know-how to reinvest in our community. How many Albert Einsteins like
Yeah.
slipped through the cracks because they couldn't afford public education or couldn't afford college.
Yeah. Yeah. They're out there. It really is where we fail to look at the cost of missed opportunities. You know, like you said, the next Einstein could be languishing somewhere because they can't afford to go to school, or we didn't support them in their in their earlier years
Right,
with proper early child care and proper pre-K and primary
right,
education. We're not doing any of those things very well, precisely because uh, the rich are getting their hands into it and taking they're taking extra pie.
right.
They've
Exactly.
got all the
They're
pie.
greedy. Their addiction to greed is destroying this country, and it's time we got to cut them off of that greed. With drug addicts, they harm themselves. Sometimes with their family, but with these greed addicts that just need to take more and more from the entire the entire country, they're hurting the entire nation. It's time to cut their addiction off.
I like the way you put that. As an addiction, like we've fought a war on drugs in this country for going on 60 years now. Um, we tax alcohol and tobacco. Uh, we try to tax sugary drinks, things like this that are bad for public health and come with societal costs. Um, I think like nothing is costing us more than addiction to wealth.
Right. Yeah, why do we have private health insurance? Is because someone's making profit off of it. Why are they trying to like make charter schools and like church
Hmm.
schools the number one source of like education in this country, and specifically in Indiana? Is because someone's going to profit off of it. Like why is marijuana or cannabis illegal? It's because big pharma sees it as a competition. Why do we not have a nationalized pharmaceutical industry? And it's all like these corporate, non-essential, like because they haven't made a drug in over 20 years. It's all just government scientists that give drugs to these
Repackaging.
companies.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because someone makes a profit off of it. So it's like
Yep.
corruption is at the core of most of the issues in this country. And if we cut off the corruption and then like tax the rich, you would see like that's why we consistently rank very low on the world like happiness index. And that you look at social democracies like Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway, uh, Germany, Netherlands, and whatnot. They're consistently in the top 10. It's because they have, universal health care. They have, more liberties than we do here in America.
But our GDP. I was listening to a
But the stock
podcast,
market,
yeah, the other day, right? And no, I know what it was. It was Fareed Zakaria. It was a podcast, but they
Mhm.
played a clip of Fareed Zakaria talking about um, how the American GDP is so much greater than a lot of these other countries, and it's like the per capita GDP in Mississippi is higher than in Canada. Well, if they're happier in Canada, if they're
Right.
happier in these other countries, maybe like
It's worth it.
GDP isn't the thing we should be using to measure our success.
It's
Maybe
like
the stock
how
market.
much money
Yeah.
the wealthy have compared to how happy everyone is, you know?
GDP is a big number is really saying how much of your economy is monetized. Like if our GDP went down because we quit monetizing healthcare or early childhood care and treated these things as public services instead of as, profit centers, well, our
Mhm.
GDP would go down, but our quality of life would go way up.
And we'd actually have more money invested back into the economy because when people save that money, they're gonna spend it on groceries or like what the needs
Yeah.
that they need. So that gets back to the economy in a different way. It's just not a parasite, that is, private health insurance that is like scamming uh millions of people out of their health insurance.
It really is weird, I think, in this country. You said parasite, and that's a good word. I think a lot of the elites, conservatives, and people that buy into that worldview view people who rely on government programs or who need assistance in some way, they think of us as parasites when really like capitalism is the thing that will burrow its teeth into you and suck until everything is gone and then go find another host.
Definitely. Yeah, no one uses like socialism like the rich. Anytime there's like a crash, like look at the 2008 crash, it's rugged individualistic
Yeah.
capitalism for all of us bottom dwellers, the bottom 99%. And then it's like utopian public socialism so they for the top 1%. So they
Yeah.
socialize the loss, they make us bail out Wall Street, but they privatize the profits. In one breath they'll brag and boast about record profits this year, but then they'll lay off another 8,000 workers like nationwide, you know?
If you look at a guy like Elon Musk, right? Like here's a guy, Tesla, he didn't really make his money selling cars so much as he like made his money like selling tax credits.
Right.
Um right? A government expenditure. The whole SpaceX thing, right? Government contracts, the Boring Company, government contracts, all the stuff that he relies on the government for the majority of his wealth. Elon Musk is the
Yeah,
biggest welfare queen on the planet.
definitely. And that's why he's
Now,
getting
the
involved.
difference
It's
is,
protecting
right,
him.
but, like, when you give him a shit ton of money, he sits on it. He lets it grow, and he'll
Mhm.
borrow against it and live that way. If you give and I hate to use the word, forgive me If you give actual welfare queens who don't really exist, like you just people who
Right.
actually need welfare to exist, if you give these people money, I don't care if they like squander it or not, right? Let's take these conservatives at their word that they're concerned about people living off the government dole and whatnot. They're at least spending the money into the economy.
Right. It's the Biden quote, like, "Hurts nobody, helps everyone," but the stimulus checks.
Yeah, I mean, like
Mhm.
it's the number that we should be worrying about less than the stock market go high or GDP go up is like is money moving through the
Right.
system. And right
Circulating. It's
now,
a healthy
yeah,
system that
it's not circulating.
circulates.
It's gummed up like a sclerotic mass inside the body politic. We are this is a heart attack what we're having right now essentially.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, no, yeah, you said it basically. You know,
Yeah,
uh
yeah,
They always they always say like, "Oh, the left wants massive redistribution of your wealth." And it's like, "No, there's a massive wealth redistribution happening in this country. It's just getting all funneled to the top." The bottom 99% is getting screwed while the top 1% has something like 70% of all the money. You know? And
yeah,
it's time we like wake up and actually start fighting for our programs that are seen as like common sense and basic human rights over across the world. Like when we're the only nation that does not have paid family leave, something's wrong. When we're the only nation that doesn't have one form or another of universal health care, something's wrong. We have a uniquely corrupt system in America. And that's why, we need to ban corporate lobbying. We need to ban super PACs and we need to have public funding of our elections and also end gerrymandering so we have a healthy
yes,
democracy.
yeah. Fair districts, money out of politics. I was just finished Elie Mistal's new book. And the thing he suggested, which I thought was a really neat idea, was increasing the size of the House of Representatives. Because
Oh,
we
I'm in
actually
favor of that.
have a very small house relative
Yeah.
to other countries. Like, I think our average rep has a constituency of like 700,000 people.
Yeah.
And, it used to be much lower. And we just kind of quit growing the house as the population grew. That would make our representatives more
Right.
responsive. Yeah,
It should be part of
dilute
the
the power
census.
of
It should be
exactly,
it
yeah,
used to be an independent, I think it was like some woman suffrage group that you know, came along with they redistrict like not Republican, not Democrat, just like some nonpartisan, independent group. They were like, "All right, this
yeah,
is just what's fair. We're going off population. We're not going to base it off like counties or how you voted last year, which is what they do now." Uh
yeah,
So yeah, like, hey, this is 100,000 people. They get one, and then you like try to make it as like squarish as possible. Like we have so much technology now. We could,
yeah.
I wouldn't say to
They
use
use
chat.
it, yeah, no, they use it to precisely to pinpoint those voters and draw, districts around to benefit themselves, like, so we have the technology to do the opposite and draw
Right,
the districts so they're at their most competitive
right,
or at the, you know, their fairest, whatever.
right. Another thing I'm in favor of is having ranked choice voting. So imagine a system to where we have no corrupt, like no money, big money in politics. We have public funding of elections, and we're not gerrymandered. It's all like distributed accordingly. But then also, you're not stuck between the lesser of two evils,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So we can
yeah, we
have
can
a
take on
healthy third party option, and like so, I would like rank, whatever your favorite party is, Democrat. All right, second party, Green Party, PSL, Libertarian, and what have you. And then, all right, and then you don't even fill out the Republican Party. That's, I mean, probably, I wouldn't do it in that order. I'd have to see what the candidate and what they're offering if there's a massive change. But you get my point. You could say,
right,
if
in
they
the
don't,
places where they've done this, yeah, it's been mixed results. Like, on one hand, it gave us Mary Peltola in Alaska. On the other hand, it gave
right,
us Eric Adams in New York. So, it's a learning process, but in the end, I think it gives you um, opportunities to compromise, work together. You'll see some, hey, well, vote for me, but like this person makes a nice number two.
Right.
Yeah, you get opportunities for cooperation. You get just more responsive candidates closer to what people in the districts actually want instead of
Right.
one or the other binary thinking
Yeah.
that
We
always
should
has.
not be
Yeah.
stuck between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. We should have like, all right, these guys suck. Let's get Bernie up there, you know?
It's a very narrow window of possibilities, and yeah, just one thing that Americans were so bad about this is, we think we're the entire world and like don't realize that like our level of political discourse in this country is like super narrow,
Right. There's
and
not really a left
other
wing at all.
countries will have like like actually open socialists and communists running elections,
Right.
and I mean maybe they don't win, but like they're there. They
They're
get
there.
to
You'll get like
infuse their
one or two
ideas into
spots,
the
you know?
stream.
Look at
Yeah,
like in Athens right now, they have like a strong communist party. You know, like no, there's different shades of whatever they want to call themselves, of course. But another thing I'm in favor of is a mix of ranked choice voting, but also and move away from the electoral college and have a popular
yeah,
vote election. You know, like if the president is here to vote all Americans,
yeah,
all right, have it be a popularity contest. Right now, it's like a contest between states, and
yeah. It's
I
silly.
mean, it's yeah, it goes back to like the slavery times, and how that benefited many,
Yep.
many of them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's an
yeah.
old
Those things were
system. It's
baked
out of
into our
date. We need to
system.
replace it.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is one of the things I could go on about this all night long.
Yeah,
That Estelle talked about is that if you increase the size of the House of Representatives, like that's something that doesn't require a constitutional amendment. Whereas like abolishing the Senate, which is anti-democratic in nature, would. Changing the Electoral College would. Update the number of representatives. That also changes the math in the Electoral College, so it's sort of dilutes its effect.
mhm.
Neat stuff. Great book. Recommend the audiobook. He's always fun to listen to. He's because he's not only incredibly sharp, but he's also hilarious.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's my sales pitch. Elliot will
I-
be waiting on
I'll look
my
into it. Yeah,
yeah.
they're running a free ad on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jackson, we're coming up on an hour here, and
Mhm.
I don't want to, keep you all night, and I don't want to keep our listeners all day, whenever they're listening. What do you want people to take away from this conversation?
Right. So I just want them to know that there is someone trying to fight for you. There's a movement on the ground level, grassroots populists trying to fight for you to get money out of politics. We're not stuck between the lesser of two evils forever. And we need to step up now more than ever to change the Democratic Party to get money out of politics. And you can find me at jacksonfranklinforcongress.com. Go to all the socials there, mostly on Facebook, Jackson Franklin for Congress, and same thing on Instagram. But yeah, these are dark times we're living in, right? But this might sound a little corny, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. All right. And it's
Yeah,
never more clear than when it's most dark, in a sense. So we need to, yeah, we need to fight. We can't just lay in a chalk outline of ourselves dead. We got to get up and, our backs are against the wall. Right now is the time. Like the only thing to do left is go on the offense, right? We need to stand up and grow, as I keep saying, we need to grow a spine and actually oppose the fascism. And in 2026, when we retake the House, as far as the House is concerned, we're going to stop Project 2025 dead in its tracks. Yet again, most of this is coming from the executive order. But, they're not going to cut another $880 billion in Medicaid once we regain the House. I'll tell you that much.
yeah,
But
yeah. And there
yeah,
are
give the campaign a look.
opportunities to hold them accountable and investigations and everything. The House very, very important that we capture that. And I'm just glad to see youth, vigor, excitement in this race in Indiana, and wish you the best of luck. We'll have you back here before the
Love to.
primary for sure. Jackson Franklin, thanks so much for
Thank you so
joining me
much for
here on the
having me,
Who's Left
Scott.
podcast. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Once again, that was Jackson Franklin. Democratic candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in Indiana's 5th Congressional District. You know, if the stumbling final chapter of the Biden presidency, the recent calls for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's resignation, and here in Indiana, the contentious race for Democratic Party chair tell us anything, it's that large portions of the population are desperate for a new generation of leadership. The sad end of Dianne Feinstein's life, the demented ramblings of Donald Trump, the continued existence of Chuck Grassley. He's so old he fought at the Battle of the Bulge. These things are painful to watch. We've crossed into a completely new world that people of all ages are still trying to navigate, but watching folks who've lived 70, 80, 90 years under a completely different global order try to figure it out and lead at the same time isn't just cringe or comical, it's fucking dangerous. Baby boomers and late silent generation stragglers like Grassley, Biden, and Nancy Pelosi inherited a world built by sacrifice. Their parents and grandparents survived the Great Depression, defeated fascism in the most brutal war in human history, and then came home to build, literally, the foundations of the American middle class. The post-war period was defined by shared prosperity, strong labor unions, massive public investment in infrastructure and education, a growing economy, and a tax code that prevented wealth from congealing at the top. And while it is true that the gains mostly accrued to white Americans, we were finally beginning to address many of the foundational disparities built into our system in response to the civil rights movement. And then the boomers came of age. What followed wasn't just decline, it was demolition, and it was deliberate. This generation, and not every individual, of course, but as a political and economic force, inherited the greatest expansion of middle class prosperity the world had ever seen, and instead of preserving it, they disassembled it, piece by piece, in the name of small government, individual liberty, and free markets. They broke the unions, slashed taxes, and deregulated Wall Street. They gutted the safety net and turned public goods into sources of private wealth. They sold the idea that government couldn't work, then spent their lives proving it. And now, here we are, in the rubble. The remaining few of the silent generation, only about 5% of the population, and the boomers, about 20%, still hold more than 60% of the country's wealth. Millennials, the largest generation, and still somehow treated like youngsters by the mainstream despite their middle age, hold less than 10%. Gen Z is just now coming of age, trying to pay rent, start families, and maybe, if they're lucky, grab a foothold in a rigged economy. Baby boomers were given an express lane to a comfortable life and burned the bridge behind them. Yet somehow, we're still told to believe it's our fault. If only we hadn't squandered our inheritance on frivolous things like gender studies degrees and avocado toast. That we're just lazy. That if we worked harder, saved more, or stopped complaining, we'd be just as well off. Bullshit. What we inherited is a poisoned well. A climate near the point of no return, an economy tilted toward the billionaire class, and a political system designed to serve only those with the wealth to buy it. Boomers were the beneficiaries of a collective American dream, and they turned it into a gated community. I was born in late 1978, a zennial, straddling the Gen X and millennial generations. And the cohorts on either side of me watched the slow deconstruction of the system that had set our parents and grandparents up for success. Still, Our formative memories and our educations told us all was well. We grew up in the long shadow of the post-war high, played in the fenced yards of homes purchased on a single income, celebrated gains by women and minorities in an increasingly inclusive society. And we cheered the end of the Cold War, the end of history culminating in a victory by the good guys. We know the pieces fit because we watched them fall away. My age group graduated into the dot-com bust, a pair of wars manufactured on false pretense, and the worst financial catastrophe since the Great Depression, finding ourselves disillusioned by the broken promises. Gen Z holds no such illusions. They were born and came of age in a system that has never worked for them. And as such, owe no loyalty or fealty to this dysfunctional political economy. And that is why I'm excited for this crop of young candidates and activists now coming into their own. Maxwell Frost, David Hogg, Kat Abu Ghazaleh, and yes, Indiana's own Jackson Franklin. Truly unburdened by what has been, this generation is free to imagine what can be and go about building a more just, equitable, and compassionate future. What do you think? Let us know. Reach out on social media. I'm on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok at Who's Left, and on most other social media sites at ScottRaj78. You can also email me at scott@whosleft.us. Thanks again to our guest Jackson Franklin. Links to his campaign website and social media accounts are in the show notes. And how about heading over to his Act Blue page and making a donation? After that contribution, if your budget allows and you value this work, please consider a paid subscription over at whosleft.us, where you can also find every episode and article we've ever published. Hit me up on social media with your feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, and please forward the show to a friend and have them forward it to another friend. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.